Hello everyone, I'm your planer guy, back with another video, this time covering the top 5 commanders in Boros. A lot of people seem to think red-white is one of the worst colors to build in Commander, if not the worst, and for the most part I would agree. But it's actually been getting quite a bit of love recently with some decent commanders, so I figure I'd run down my top 5 choices for building a commander deck and which commanders I would recommend using. Start us off, what kind of criteria was I looking at? So most Boros commanders just sort of did some Anthem effect, +3/+0 if you have a bunch of artifacts, or double all their damage, or gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control, stuff like that, which sure isn't bad per se, but it doesn't really help any of the shortings Boros has, where there are a few other commanders that can change how Boros is supposed to be played from small swingy to actually something relevant in Commander, and that's the kind of commanders I was looking for, something that could kind of just change how Boros was played enough to make it a viable archetype in Commander. Anyway, on with the list. Number 5 on my list was actually printed just earlier this year in Commander 2019. That is Gerrard, Weatherlight Hero. Gerrard is a 3/3 human soldier that costs 2 red-white and reads, First strike. When Gerrard, Weatherlight Hero dies, exile it and return to the battlefield all artifacts and creature cards in your graveyard that are put there from the battlefield this turn. This is interesting. So he dies, you have to let him hit graveyard, but after that, when you put him in exile, then you can relocate him to the command zone, so he still ends up cycling around through a bunch of zones back to command zone. He just brings back a lot of the creatures or artifacts after a board wipe, anything like that. He has card advantage stapled to him. Now, it's not the best card advantage, it's quite gimmicky. They have to have died this turn. Kind of lends itself more towards a bit of a Boros Aristocrats, which is kind of weird, but he's a 3/3 for 4 first strike isn't that bad of value, and he just kind of helps you get back a bunch of value that you lost. Granted, it has to be that turn, but a few sack outlets here and there, an Altar of Dementia, something like that, and you can just go off with this deck, especially with the amount of power Boros creatures tend to have. Anyway, this one isn't really the best, but it was an interesting card printed this year, gave you some value, and I think if you're considering Boros, this is something that at least needs to be on your radar. Reading through the rulings is somewhat interesting. Basically, the most interesting thing here is just being that even after he's died this turn, the prolonged ability, the postponed abilities, anything that happens this turn. So if it happens during your first main phase, you have creatures die in combat, sack a few second main phase. When you go to end step, well, all creatures and artifacts that are put there this turn come right back. So it doesn't even have to stick on the battlefield for the ability to do what it wants to do. Fortunately enough, on Card Kingdom right now, he's going for 35 cents. So this is a deck you're considering building. Super cheap to pick up. Boros isn't a very competitive archetype, so most of the cards aren't super expensive there either. And he's only in 97 decks on EDH, so he's, like I said, not something super popular to build around. But if you're considering Boros, as per the title, this is in my top 5 and something I would definitely consider. Number 2 on our list is from Dominaria. It's Tiana, Ship's Caretaker. Tiana's a 3/3 Angel Artificer. Those are some relevant subtypes for sure. That costs 3 red-white and reads Flying First Strike. Whenever an aura or equipment you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. The reason this is so good, again, card advantage stapled to it. As long as she's on the battlefield, any enchant or artifact or equipment is just going to keep cycling right back into your hand. So it allows you to play a Voltron strategy where the destruction or removal of your equipment and enchantments aren't going to do anything. So putting all your eggs in one basket, oh no, they go back into hand, you lay them right back out. Provides an extra layer of safety. Anytime a creature dies it's enchanted, it fills your hand up so long as it's not Tiana, because then she'd be dead. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. But having her off to the sidelines, 3/3 flying first strike for 5 isn't the best, so kind of have her sitting off, maybe put a few Swiftfoot boots, something like that on her just to keep her around, and then after that, anything that happens, you can just keep laying more enchantments back down. Definitely think this is an interesting commander to choose, and since Dominaria just cycled out of Standard, she's only going for 25 cents. That's not bad, even cheaper than Gerrard. If Boros is something you're really wanting to consider, a Voltron strategy is very possible with Tiana and very reliable, especially since she's only in 196 decks on EDH Rec. Very low. Granted, it is more than Gerrard, but she's been around longer. Again, I do think this is a better commander choice. Overall, I don't think it's that much of a difference. Either one would be a solid pick for Boros. Number 3 on my list is also from Dominaria, but don't expect to open it in any packs. It's Firesong and Sunspeaker. Made famous in that one episode of Game Nights that one time. It's an interesting commander. Firesong and Sunspeaker is a 4/6 Minotaur Cleric. Again, super relevant subtypes. If you give a creature this Sword of Dungeons and Dragons, it has protection from this, so there you go. Anyway, it's a 4/6 Minotaur Cleric for 4 red white that reads, red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Fire Song and Sunspeaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player, turns your burn spells into heal spells, turns your heal spells into burn spells, while doing both, makes both do the other. It allows a lot of synergy. You turn your burn spells to charge you up into Aetherflux Reservoir, so you can just start nuking people with that. It's interesting. It changes the way Boros is supposed to be played from a small swingy deck to a Spells Matter. You can run Lil Peasy, you can run Burning Prophet, I think, the one from War of the Spark that lets you scry, get a little card advantage there. It's definitely interesting. I don't know if it's the best, but being able to gain life and burn people, or more importantly, burn people to gain life in Commander, win you the game with Felidar Sovereign, provides a lot of interesting interactions, to say the least. Reading through the rulings are actually pretty interesting. A big one being that if something like the Boros Helix causes you to deal damage and gain life on the same red-white spell, it's a white spell, it's dealing damage with lifelink, so you gain life there, and you're gaining 3 life off of the ability, so the 3 damage ping from the second ability will trigger twice. Not only that, but if a white spell you don't control causes you to gain life, his second ability will also trigger not just white spells you control, but any white spell forcing you to gain life. Very interesting. On top of that, he happens to be our most expensive this far, costing $1.29 for a buy a box promo. That's not that bad, seeing as how expensive Nexus of Fate got up to. For how interesting of a commander he is, worth considering. And he's in a staggering 615 decks in EDH rec, and no small thanks to game nights, presumably. He is an interesting Boros commander. In the top 3, sure, because of the way he changes Boros, but just inching in there past some of the other ones. If you're considering Boros, a Spells Matter strategy is worth considering. Bringing us in at number 2 on this list is a card from Kaladesh, a card I had quite a bit of fun with back in Standard, Dapala. Pilot Exemplar. Dapala is a 3/3 dwarf pilot, actually relevant subtypes based on what she does, that costs 1 red white and reads, other dwarves you control get +1/+1, each vehicle you control gets +1/+1 as long as it's a creature, and whenever Dapala, Pilot Exemplar, becomes tapped, you may pay X. If you do, reveal the top X cards of your library, put all dwarf and vehicle cards from among them into your hand, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. That's card draw, straight up. Sure, it's not any card draw, but you're filling your hand with creatures and creatures. Maybe you're putting Smuggler's Copter, maybe Parhelion, could be anything. Dwarves, could get 7 of them. Definitely an interesting card. Forces you into dwarf and vehicle tribal, but with the kind of card draw that has, definitely makes going wide, getting the small swingy, turning them into big swingy with vehicles, pumping them up with artifacts, enchantments. Definitely a valid strategy. There's nothing super interesting going on in the reminder text. However, she is going for 25 cents on Card Kingdom. Another quarter for a solid entry in the Boros Commander League. Draws you cards, buffs dwarfs, buffs vehicles, so your dwarves can crew your vehicles easier without having to need as many of them, and then your vehicles are bigger, you throw enchantments, equipment, all that fun stuff onto them, you swing for a bunch, you have Daredevil Dragster to draw cards. Definitely seems like an interesting deck. She's only in 483 decks, granted more than some of the other entries, but again, not the super most played commander. Boros never is. If you're considering Boros, if you really want to play the swingy strategy, dwarf vehicles, an easy and a solid entry. Coming in at number 1, the commander everyone saw coming, Feather the Redeemed. Feather is a 3/4 angel that costs red, white, white, so a little heavy on the white, and reads, flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Any spell at all that targets at least one of your creatures, you get to put right back in your hand, cast it again next turn. That builds up value really quickly. Spells that +1/+0, draw a card. Well, you're drawing a card, putting this right back into your hand. Next turn, you're drawing another card. It lets you almost double the cards in hand every turn if you have enough of them. Spells that let you divide damage up however you want among any number of targets. You shoot 1 damage at one of your creatures and then nuke something else. Well, it did target one of your creatures, so right back into hand. Definitely an interesting card. Any of the spells in the deck, which if price is a big consideration, happen to mostly be commons and uncommons, mostly for draft and sealed, cycle right back into your hand, keep pumping your creatures right back into your hand, drawing cards off of them. It's definitely another Spells Matter deck, so young Peasy can fit in here. Anything like that. It lets you ramp so fast into more cards, more damage. This is honestly a Boros deck you might consider running Reliquary Tower in, which is very interesting. Reading through the rulings, they're pretty basic, but there is one interesting one. You cast something that exiles instead of going to the graveyard, or a flashback spell, because maybe it got milled there or something like that. Maybe you had to discard it. Well, good news, you can apply Feather's ability first. So instead of exiling it to the spell, exile it to Feather, put it right back into hand from graveyard. It was a flashback spell. That provides so many options. It even just adds so much more backup that I didn't even know that was a ruling. It's an insane ability of this creature. On top of that, she is technically our most expensive, going for $229 on Card Kingdom. These are some real big entries. Again, if you're considering Boros, it's not a super expensive deck to build. Well, it's not always super reliable. Cards like this can fill your hand up. God's willing, keep it safe, keep scrying almost indefinitely. I would recommend running Vidalk and Orrery so you can cast the targeting sorceries on everyone else's turn, keep putting them back into hand. Definitely provides an interesting loop that will almost certainly carry you to victory with this deck. Considering Boros, this is the way to go, providing yet another solid option. There it is, my top 5 commanders in Boros, from an aristocrat strategy to a Voltron strategy. Spells matter, go wide, and even fill your hand up and loop spells to pump creatures. There's several different ways to build Boros, all of which will keep providing you more value than just a simple anthem, even if it's not a simple anthem and it doubles all damage on an angel with first strike. These are the way to build it. You can always run Gisela in the 99. Thank you for watching. Now that I've finished up midterms and finals and all that nonsense, I'm going to get a few more videos rolling out, hopefully, starting with this one. If you noticed, there's some music in the background. That's just a test. We'll see how it does. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell to stay notified whenever I upload videos, because hopefully over the next few weeks I'll have a few more trickling out. Next video is probably top 5 green cards, top 10 green cards you should always be running. We'll see. Anyway, click the box here to watch the full playlist of commander cards you should be running but aren't. There's some good entries if you're considering building a deck with one of these commanders. Or click the box here to watch how to build a deck if you're just getting started. Anyway, don't forget to follow me on Twitter with the link below. I've been your planer guide, and thank you for watching.